Here's something that blew my mind. Mathematicians have discovered that about 85% of natural growth patterns in the universe follow fractal mathematics. And today we're exploring how that same mathematical precision might actually explain human potential.
That's fascinating. Could you break down what exactly these fractal patterns are? I think understanding the math helps unlock why this metaphor is so powerful.
Well, imagine looking at a fern leaf. Each tiny branch is a perfect miniature copy of the whole leaf. That's a fractal, a pattern that keeps repeating at different scales. Nature is full of them, from snowflakes to coastlines to the way lightning branches through the sky.
Hmm. So you're saying our personal growth might follow similar mathematical patterns? That's not something I would have expected.
Exactly. And here's what's really interesting: research in developmental psychology has shown that skill acquisition often follows these fractal like patterns. You know how experts talk about the 10-0-0-0 hour rule for mastery? Well, it turns out that progress doesn't happen linearly. It unfolds in these recursive patterns, just like fractals. Like,
You know what this reminds me of? I was working with this young musician who started with simple scales, and over time, those basic patterns evolved into complex compositions. But you could still hear those original patterns woven throughout their work.
that's such a perfect example. And it connects to something fascinating in neuroscience. Studies have shown that our neural pathways actually develop in fractal like patterns. When we learn something new, our brain creates these branching connections that look remarkably similar to natural fractal patterns.
Well, that's really interesting because it suggests there's this deep mathematical order to how we grow and develop, even when it feels chaotic or random.
Right? And get this. Researchers at the Santa Fe Institute found that successful organizations tend to develop in fractal patterns too. The same principles that guide small team dynamics end up shaping the entire corporate structure.
So, if we understand these patterns, could we potentially optimize our growth and development?
That's where it gets really interesting. Studies have shown that when people consciously work with these natural growth patterns instead of against them, they tend to see about 40% better results in skill development. It's like surfing a wave instead of fighting against it.
Though I have to wonder, doesn't this put a lot of pressure on people? Like we're supposed to be constantly expanding and growing?
Well, here's the thing: in nature, fractals don't just expand endlessly. They find their optimal form within their environment. A tree follows fractal patterns but doesn't grow infinitely. It reaches a sustainable size for its ecosystem. The same principle applies to human development.
That's actually really reassuring. So, it's more about finding the right pattern and scale for our own context?
Exactly. And research in positive psychology backs this up. Studies show that sustainable personal growth typically happens in these fractal-like cycles of expansion and consolidation. It's not about constant forward motion.
The way you describe it makes me think about relationships too, how each interaction contains patterns that ripple through future connections.
Yes, and there's fascinating research on this. Social network analysts have found that relationship patterns tend to follow fractal mathematics. The way we interact in our closest relationships creates templates that repeat at larger social scales.
You know what's really striking me now? The way this connects to broader social changes, how small actions can create these larger patterns of transformation.
Well, you're touching on something profound there. Sociologists studying social movements have identified what they call fractal activism, where small-scale changes in individual behavior can trigger larger systemic transformations. It's like each personal change contains the seed of broader social evolution.
So, in a way, we're all part of these interconnected patterns of growth and change.
Precisely. And here's what I find most compelling. Understanding these patterns gives us a new way to think about potential. It's not about forcing growth or following someone else's path. It's about recognizing our own unique fractal pattern and allowing it to unfold naturally.
That really changes how we might approach personal development and goal setting, doesn't it?
It really does. And as we wrap up, I think that that's the key insight. Our potential isn't just some vague concept of endless growth. It's this beautifully precise pattern unique to each of us, waiting to unfold in its own mathematically perfect way.
Let's dive into the fascinating world of plant based omega 3s.
That's really interesting timing because I just read about how traditional cultures have been using these seeds for thousands of years. But why are we only now discovering their true power?
Well, it's actually a perfect example of ancient wisdom meeting modern science. These plant sources contain something called ALA alpha linolenic acid, and new research shows that just 1 tablespoon of flaxseed oil contains more omega 3s than several servings of fish. Though here's the catch: our bodies have to convert it.
So you're saying there's more to the story than just eating a handful of seeds?
Exactly right. And this is where it gets fascinating. Our bodies are like little chemical factories that have to transform that ALA into EPA and DHA, the forms we typically get from fish. But here's what's really mind-blowing: algae. These tiny organisms are actually the original source of all omega 3s. Fish just get them by eating the algae.
That makes me think about how we're now growing algae in controlled environments to make omega-3 oils. It's like we're cutting out the middleman, or should I say the middle fish.
Oh my goodness, yes. And what's really exciting is that these algae farms are producing highly concentrated omega 3s without any of the ocean pollutant concerns we have with fish oil. The sustainability aspect is huge. We're talking about a renewable resource that doesn't impact marine ecosystems at all.
You know what's fascinating about all this? The storage requirements for these plant-based sources. Most people don't realize how delicate these oils are.
Mm, and that's such a crucial point. These omega 3 rich oils are incredibly sensitive to light, heat, and oxygen. I learned the hard way that keeping flaxseed oil in a clear bottle on the counter is basically like watching it deteriorate in real time. It needs to be in an opaque bottle in the fridge.
Well, that explains why my ground flaxseed started smelling kind of funny after a few weeks.
Oh no! Yeah, that's another common mistake. With ground flax seeds, you really want to only grind what you need for about a week at a time. It's like nature's way of forcing us to stay mindful about our food preparation. And speaking of mindful preparation, let's talk about dosage, because this is where people often go wrong.
I'm guessing more isn't always better.
Not at all. The research shows that about 2 tablespoons of chia or ground flaxseed daily is optimal. It's like this perfect sweet spot where you're getting all the benefits without overwhelming your system. And what's really interesting is that these plant sources come with bonus nutrients, fiber, minerals, and other compounds that you wouldn't get from fish oil alone.
That reminds me of something I read about walnuts. Apparently, they're one of the few nuts with significant omega-3 content.
Yes. And isn't it amazing how walnuts actually look like tiny brains? It's this beautiful example of what herbalists call the doctrine of signatures, the idea that plants often resemble the body parts they're good for. Recent studies are showing incredible connections between omega 3 consumption and cognitive function.
So, what do you think the future holds for plant-based omega-3s?
Well, I think we're just scratching the surface. With advancing research and technology, we're discovering new plant sources and better ways to harness their benefits. For example, hemp seeds are emerging as this incredible source that not only provides omega 3s, but also has the perfect balance of omega 6s and complete protein.
That's such an optimistic way to look at it. It really makes the future of nutrition seem bright.
Indeed, it does. And you know what's really exciting? As we understand more about these plant sources, we're finding that they might offer unique benefits we never even considered. It's like each source, whether it's chia, flax, hemp, or algae, has its own special superpower. The key is learning how to use them all in harmony. What if I told you that the fountain of youth isn't some magical spring, but actually exists inside every cell of your body? The latest breakthroughs in stem cell research are showing us that we might have been carrying the key to regenerative healing all along.
That's fascinating, but how exactly are scientists accessing these hidden healing powers?
Well, it turns out our bodies have these incredible repair stations scattered throughout in our fat tissue, bone marrow, and even floating in our blood. Recent studies show that just 1 tablespoon of fat tissue can contain up to 500 times more stem cells than the same amount of bone marrow.
Hold on. You're saying we can actually harvest healing cells from our own fat?
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. Scientists have discovered that these cells can be reprogrammed through something called epigenetic modification. Think of it like having access to your body's source code, where we can activate certain genetic programs without actually changing the DNA itself.
So, what kind of real world applications are we looking at?
The possibilities are huge. For example, researchers at Stanford recently demonstrated that activated stem cells could reduce inflammation in arthritic joints by up to 80% in just 6 weeks. It's like hitting a biological reset button.
Hmm. But there must be some challenges or limitations to this technology.
Oh, absolutely. Like any cutting edge science, we're still learning. The really fascinating part is how diet plays into all this. Studies show that certain food combinations can actually trigger these regenerative processes. For instance, a 2022 study found that a specific fasting protocol, combined with particular nutrients, could increase stem cell activation by up to 400%,
That's incredible that food could have such a direct impact on our cellular repair systems.
right? And here's another mind blowing fact: our bodies naturally activate these repair mechanisms during sleep, but by age 60, that activation drops by about 50%. The exciting part is that scientists are finding ways to restore these youthful patterns through targeted interventions.
You mentioned earlier about reprogramming cells. How exactly does that work?
Well, imagine your genes are like a massive control panel with millions of switches. Through epigenetic reprogramming, scientists can flip specific switches that control healing and regeneration. Recent research has identified over 100 different genetic markers that can be influenced this way.
That sounds promising, but also potentially risky. What safeguards are in place?
You're raising an important point. The FDA has established strict protocols for these treatments, requiring multiple safety checkpoints. For example, each batch of activated stem cells must pass through at least 25 different quality control tests before being approved for treatment.
Looking ahead, what do you think this means for the future of medicine?
Well, the projections are pretty extraordinary. By 2030, experts estimate that regenerative medicine could help treat or cure over 50 different diseases that currently have no effective treatments. We're talking about everything from heart disease to neurodegenerative conditions.
That would be revolutionary for healthcare as we know it.
And here's what I find most exciting: we're just scratching the surface. Recent studies suggest that combining these treatments with AI-driven personalization could increase their effectiveness by up to 60%. It's like having a GPS system for cellular repair, guiding these healing mechanisms exactly where they need to go.
So what's the next big breakthrough we should be watching for?
The holy grail right now is something called programmed regeneration, where we could potentially activate these healing mechanisms preventively before disease or damage occurs. Early trials are showing promising results, with some participants showing biological age markers reducing by up to 3 years in just 6 months of treatment.
That's absolutely mind-blowing when you think about the implications.
It really is. And perhaps the most beautiful part is that we're not introducing anything foreign to our bodies. We're simply learning to activate and enhance what nature already gave us. It's like we're finally reading the user manual for our own biology and discovering features we never knew we had.